Yeah, so it's, I just do like a soft roll in, so we'll just keep it very easy.
Yeah, sure.
Things like that. So, all right, well, Darin, thank you very much for coming in today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, it's a gloomy day today, but
Yeah, it's been off and on. It was bright this morning. It's raining now,
Right.
so typical Canadian weather, I guess.
I know, right? Can't escape it, but
Yeah.
summer's coming. Is there, is this a good day to inspect the house then, would you say? Or
Rainy day is always a good day to inspect the house, because if you're going to find some water problems, that's probably the day you're going to
best time
find
to
it.
do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
most likely.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
But is it, I guess, kind of hard for you too because you don't have control of that, right? Like
Well-
if the inspection needs to be done today, then
Well,
it is what it is.
Yeah, that's the problem, especially if it's been, hasn't rained in about a week and you go to a property, unless there's some telltale signs, and even if there is, you can't really guarantee it has been because you
Right.
don't know.
Right.
So, right? So it's hard to say.
Right. But I guess is it fair to say if it was a bad enough problem, like persistent water damage, you'll probably see the telltale signs anyway.
True. If it's a bad, moisture intrusion area or you got a water leak somewhere in the basement, chances are behind drywall, let's say,
Right.
it's probably still damp anyway.
Right.
It's probably still wet, and there may be some other telltale signs that maybe there's some mold growing in
Right.
it or whatnot. So,
Something warranting.
yeah.
further
So
investigation.
yeah, chances are if it's been an ongoing problem, there's probably some signs that it probably is.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we just dive right into it. But so, why don't you tell everyone what you do? So you're a home inspector for a Buyer's Choice.
Yes, so Buyer's Choice Home Inspections, we are a franchise, one of the largest franchises in Canada.
Okay.
Across Canada from coast to coast. I work in Durham Region and the GTA.
Okay.
So we own a franchise, but we can operate anywhere in anywhere in Ontario, basically.
Anywhere in Ontario.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this business? Like, how did you become a home inspector? What's your background?
Yeah, sure. So I spent probably almost 20 years in the construction equipment rental industry.
Okay.
A couple different companies, managed a lot of branches, mechanics, drivers, sales associates, and so on. And then COVID came in and things changed. Perspectives changed, and homeschooling girls and that. And I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of changes that happened in their
Yes.
life during that time. And this opportunity sort of fell in my lap. It took me a little while to go, from a paycheck to the unknown,
Yes.
as you can probably relate, when you're a business owner or franchise owner, the unknown, right?
Yes. There's no ceiling, but there's no floor as well.
Exactly.
That's
There's no ceiling. There's no floor. Exactly. So
Yeah.
you can make as much as you want, right? But there's some risks obviously coming along with that.
Of course.
But it just takes persistence and some work and hard work and just during COVID time, homeschooling gave me time to grow the business. It was a slow growth, but I figured and it was a hard time because you couldn't see anybody, right? You guys aren't in the offices. You can't go anywhere. You can't meet anybody. So I turned to social media as basically my main focus.
Right.
And my main impact to gain relationships and slowly build them.
Well, that's smart because now that is the social media game, right? Everyone is on social media. They're looking for things there first.
For sure.
So that probably was better for you than anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then it came to the point where you can start to meet people. Then you put a face to the name
Right.
from behind the screen type thing, and then the relationships started to kind of click and started
see.
to grow, and then word of mouth from there.
That's
right?
awesome. So that means you're doing a good job then.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, you did one inspection for me, and I thought you were great.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And
Thank
then
you.
Trevor did another one for me because you were busy. So
Yeah.
I think you guys foster a good relationship there with all the not agents, but all the inspectors.
Yeah, so I mean, because we obviously operate in different territories, but we help each other out. So I might get if you have a property in Hamilton. We have inspectors in Hamilton. Chances are I'm probably not going to drive to Hamilton.
No.
It's a little bit far. It takes me out of my area,
Of
right?
course,
But
yeah.
we have other inspectors that we can refer you to.
Right. No, it's good to have a network, right?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
awesome. What are the how does one become a home inspector?
So there's quite a bit of training. Us as a company, we spend about 650 plus hours total
Oh, wow.
schooling and field training.
Okay.
So we use a company called Carson Dunlop who does all the training. There's some
Okay.
other schools you can go to. So there's a whole bunch of courses, exams. That could take up to 6 months or so, and then you
Okay.
got field training.
I see.
And you go field training. So good thing with us because we're a franchise, we'll go with a fellow inspector
Right.
that's been around a long time. He'll what they call a master inspector.
Okay.
And he'll do the training until you feel that you're ready to go on your own.
Okay. That's very cool.
Basically, yeah.
Is it a license with the government of Ontario or
So
is it-
yeah, so only BC and Alberta you have to be licensed.
Okay.
Anywhere else you're certified.
I see.
So when you are an inspector, you do have to be part of an association. So we're
Okay.
part of a company called Internachi.
Okay.
But there's Ontario and Canada, Ojai and Capi, they call them. They have their own individual, but you have to at least belong to one of those associations.
I see.
And then you're become a certified, not licensed. Licensed only Alberta and BC.
Okay, so certified, but you still have to, I guess you have to renew every once in a while and
Well, you have to be part of the membership. You have to, so they get that, and being part of the membership is great because they have all kinds of free training for you. but
Right.
that you have to keep in good standing every year.
I see. Is there? I guess
And
there's
a fee.
mandatory continuing
And there's
ed.
and there's a fee. It's
There's always
basically-
a fee. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, there's always a fee. There's always a fee for a year, but there's
Yeah.
mandatory, education hours you have to do every year.
Okay, that
right?
makes sense. No,
Yeah,
because things change. I mean,
for sure.
yeah.
Change. You do it for so long, you might forget one area, right? Or you haven't seen something in a long time, so they're good refresher courses.
Right.
Right.
No, absolutely.
Being in home inspections, we're like what we call a practitioner, right? You're not a specialist, but you
Right.
see so many different areas, but there might be an area where you may not see for a long time,
Right.
right?
No, for sure.
Like oil furnaces, for example. I mean, I saw one yesterday, but you don't see them very often. So
Right.
there's different things that you see that you might not see very often.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, there's also some things that are not included in inspection, right? Like wet certified. That would be something different. Like
Yep.
if it's a wood burning stove.
Yep. So there's different, exactly. So and I am wet certified.
Oh, you are?
Yep,
Okay.
I am
Okay.
now. I got
Okay.
it about a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Because I wanted to add on services. I kind of want to be
Right.
the one-stop shop, right? So home
Well,
inspections, wet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then there's septic inspections, which I do as well.
Okay.
We do radon testing. Radon testing, you don't really have to get, special training for,
need
but it's
to
just
get
another add-on service that we do. You got to do a little bit of training for it, but it's not like wet certified where you pay for it. You have to extensive training to
I
get
see.
it done.
Okay.
But yeah, there's definitely different areas.
Okay.
For sure.
Do you see why it's a separate certification for the wet or?
Oh yeah, it's,
Yeah,
it's fire,
it's
right?
fire, okay.
It's fire. So there's different things. It's the one area that's really black and white.
I see.
Right? Like there's no when you do, and there's different levels of wet inspections. We do what's called like a level 1, which is just a visual. That's more for the insurance companies to
Okay.
keep them happy.
Okay.
But then there's level 2 and level 3, which are more invasive inspections.
I see.
So if I go to do a fireplace and I see it's kind of fallen apart, I may actually now request a level 2 or a
I
level
see.
3 inspection to get done because there's probably some other issues.
Oh, I see.
It's just not a matter about clearances.
I
That's what
see.
the insurance company all cares about is
I
clearances
see.
for combustible items.
Okay,
Right?
makes sense.
So-
Oh, the leveling system is reminds me of like environmentals.
Yeah.
'Cause you do level 1. If it warrants level 2, then you go. Okay, so it's the same
Similar.
idea.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
For sure.
What like who's your primary clientele for home inspections? I guess is it realtors? Yeah. Okay.
Yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
Because being on social media, I mean, I can market to clients, but marketing to clients is hard, right? Who do you
Right.
market to? You don't know who's buying a house and where do you go do that?
Right.
So, and that's why I turned to social media, figuring, if I gain relationships with yourselves, word will spread. And then once I do clients, and then the clients will start referring me if I do a great job, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely.
Then they'll start referring me, right? And
Right.
just starting like your business, right? You want referrals. Referrals are
course.
huge. You want the word to spread.
Yeah, referrals are the name of the game.
Yeah.
I imagine. Yeah. I mean, we'd like new business too, but
For sure.
yeah.
But the more people you deal with, the more people you know, and you do a good job, that's
Mm-hmm.
going to spread. They're going to remember you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we try, like, you don't. There's always a different. There's always a client for someone, right? So, if I've dealt with you and you
Yeah.
were great, you're more likely to refer me people that I want to deal with. If you
Yeah.
know what I mean. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a certain type of house that is usually more troublesome? Like, are you usually finding more problems with the older homes or newer? Because I hear newer sometimes have more issues.
Different issues.
Different
So
issues.
yeah, so things like I do a lot of tear-on warranty and PDI inspections, right?
Oh, you
so,
do? Okay.
So
Okay.
PDI is before closing, or tear-on warranty is more the 30-day or the 1 year, which will
Right.
pretty much be they should come back and fix almost anything.
Right.
Just different problems. So that's more stuff that got missed, stuff that
Okay.
should have been done by closing that was missed, or whatever the case. And then it depends. Usually older homes. A lot of times homes in the country, the climate that it's in, maybe some troublesome. And sometimes when the house has been, turned over many times, different people do start doing different work to the house. That's when usually when problems start to happen.
I see.
Old century homes, there's different things to look for in century homes, depending on if it was ever updated, if it was ever renovated. I've been in some beautiful century homes that have been fully renovated and are in great shape.
Okay.
Then there's ones that, if you're not taking care, that's why maintenance is huge on homes, because you don't take care of it for a long period of time, you let it get to a certain way, whether it's water in the basement, you don't do anything about it, it starts to create rot, deterioration stuff, and then it causes other problems.
Starts
So-
snowballing.
Yeah, exactly. So it all depends. But, new, old, I've been in both.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a preference which you prefer to inspect or?
You could say new homes are maybe a little bit easier to get around.
Sure.
But older homes are unique. I love older homes because they've got character.
Right.
Right. They're unique and they got character, and you're always finding cool things and different things that you've never seen before.
That's fair.
And part of home inspecting is something that's like a puzzle, trying to figure things out.
Right.
Right. As you go. So older homes are pretty cool because I just like the character.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's really no roadmap. It all depends on the
Yeah.
person that built it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Okay. Why do you think, why, in your opinion, why is it important to get an inspection?
So obviously, I use the old term, when we go buy, and obviously the dollar value is different, but we go buy a used car.
Yes.
We're never buying a used car without checking it out. You're going to take it to the mechanic. You're going to have them look it out. How are the brakes? Does it need an oil change? Right? And the tire rotations or whatever. that's $30,000 or whatever, let's say. But in $1 million house, a lot of people are buying houses and no inspections. I mean, you got to at least figure out how the house works.
No, for sure.
And sometimes about home inspection, what I say is not always about finding the doom and gloom and the big stuff. It's maintenance.
Yeah, little things too.
The things to know about the house. How do you maintain it? How do you take care of it? Because as you live in the house years, if you don't know how to take care of the house, it could cause a lot of problems down the road.
No, that's true. That's true. Well, we had that issue with the hot market. I'm sure you experienced it. There's a lot of litigation going on right now because of that. They bought the house, sight unseen,
Yep.
no time for an inspection.
Yeah.
We were actually doing inspections like same day
Yeah.
before we put the offer in, like literally same day. And then, it's risky because
Yeah.
I had buyers sometimes, 2-3 inspections they had to do because they just lost the house, right? But at least we tried to do it beforehand, because if you buy it sight unseen or no inspection, you're just asking for trouble, right?
No, most definitely. So what we started doing in specifically in COVID, great thing about our company, we're always trying to pivot, right?
Right.
Trying to pivot on things. How can we benefit the buyers and yourselves to at least give some type of coverage or some type of view of the property, even though it's not a full inspection. So we started doing what's called a pre-offer consultation.
Oh,
it's kind of what you're
cool.
touching on. So
Right.
before the offer date's going to be next Wednesday, but you want to at least check the house, you go in for a visit. So you book off a half an hour. I'll come with you and your client. There's no report, so it's a bit different. So that's why we can call it an inspection.
Right.
It's more of a consultation, because we will, in that 1 hour, we'll focus on like the 5 most important things:
Right.
foundation, HVAC systems, roof, attic, and electrical
Okay.
panel. And at least give the buyer just some view on the big stuff.
Right.
Right? Yeah, we're not testing plugs or we're not running faucets and stuff like that, right? But at least give them some comfort, so when they go into offer, they got a bit of a picture. Okay,
what
the
they're
foundation's
dealing
great, electrical's good. Oh, maybe I need to upgrade 200 amp service for 100, or whatever the case.
Right.
And makes, the attic's got no mold, so that's great. The roof's in good shape, so at least going in, the big number areas are kind of looked at.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of what it was designed to do. So
No, that's
it wasn't perfect, but give them something.
No, it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Actually, I wish I knew about that, because we were actually doing full inspections. We were
Okay.
just same day. I mean, it didn't always work, but that was the only option that I knew about at the time.
And I think that's, you could probably talk about it. I'm assuming it was probably not easy to get full inspections. I think a lot of listing
Yeah.
agents probably wouldn't let you in to do a full 3-hour inspection.
No,
right?
they didn't want to,
Yeah.
but it depends
Depends.
situation to
For sure.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes where we'd have more luck too is if it was like an offer date situation. So we knew it was a week away,
Yeah.
then we had a little bit of time.
True.
But no, to your point, it really depended on the situation. Absolutely.
No, for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree. So yeah, I always pitch that it's important to get an inspection. That's one of the 2 clauses I always include: inspection and financing.
Yeah.
Especially now, this time, it's very easy
Yeah.
to have that in there.
Yeah, because even COVID, I don't think you even get financing sometimes, right? You had to have
It had to be a firm offer.
Everything
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah. And
Which
you're
is-
paying over ask, and it was,
and it's stressful. Real estate, the transaction is stressful to begin with.
Of course,
Right?
yeah.
So now moving into a house and not having it looked at. So I have no idea. How old is your furnace? Is it 25 years old? Could it die next? You don't know.
Right. No,
right?
for sure, for
A
sure.
lot of people don't know how to know. They don't, how to figure out the age of the furnace or the air conditioner or the water heater.
Mm-hmm.
Not really how old. At least if you know that it's 25 years old, let's say, okay, you know what? Or the roof, for example, right? Well, the roof's probably 15, 20 years old. I was up there taking a good look at it. Well, now you can kind of put that in the budget. But if you don't know, and all of a sudden, surprise.
Well, yeah, and everything, especially
know?
now in this economy, everything's so
Yeah.
expensive, right?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
a new roof, easily 10 grand.
Yep.
Depends on the size of the house. I
So
guess.
the house, but average, let's say 8 to 10 grand on
Yeah.
average. Yeah.
Furnace.
Yeah. Furnace and
grand,
ACs, 10,
5,
12 grand each,
yeah.
together, probably, yeah.
Yeah. No, for
So-
sure. So, I mean, these are not small items, right?
Yeah.
No, I agree.
And when you're, a lot of buyers, I'm sure when they're putting every penny into these houses too. So when you're buying these houses, you're all in. So last thing you
that's
need
true.
is a $10,000 or $20,000 expense to come down.
Oh, and it always hits at the worst possible time,
Yeah.
too. So, no, absolutely.
For sure.
What would you, out of all those, like at a roof, furnace, AC, that type of thing, what do you normally see is are there trends? Like, is it normally the furnace that's bad in the house, or what do you normally see?
Probably more the roof.
More the roof?
Yeah, more
Okay.
the roof. Furnaces for the most part. I can tell if it's been taken care of. If you take care of a furnace, it'll last you a long
last a
time.
while,
It may not
okay.
work as efficiently as it should or once did, but if you take care of it, maintain and look at it, it could last you a long time.
Right.
But roofs always get forgotten about. They're high up,
Interesting.
nobody can see it,
Right.
nobody thinks about it. So that's usually one area that gets forgotten about the most.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's important though. Well, you don't want water damage fast.
No,
right? Yeah.
no, for sure. You need to know if it's time to change it, because if you let it go too long and you got water, now you got some other problems, right? Now you've created more money and more issues.
No, absolutely, because it just spreads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I realized because my my hot water tank intermittently flames out, so I have to restart it manually myself. But anyways, it got me into looking into, trying to maintain it, see if I got to replace it or not. But I didn't realize there is, I forget what they call it. I think it's
Anode tube.
Yes, yes. I didn't even know that was a thing. I guarantee you, probably maybe 90% of people don't change that.
No, for sure. Most people don't, and that's why. And when they go, then it starts it stops extracting the rust right from the water heater.
Right.
And that's when the water heater starts to go. That's why they have a lifespan on them.
I
Right.
see.
And that's why water heaters are only 10 to 12 years rough lifespan.
Because of
that
that.
anode will really start to deteriorate.
Oh, wow,
And
but-
then it stops working, it stops doing its job.
Right, but it could be changed, right?
Yeah,
So,
you can be changed
yeah.
for sure.
Well, it's interesting. So I looked in my basement and just the location where the hot water tank is, because it's just a solid.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be able to get it out.
Yeah.
But I did look comparing online. There are like link ones where you can still feed it through,
Yeah.
kind of fish it through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing. So
Yeah, no, definitely. Even flushing the water heater, right? There's that, right? They give you a valve at the bottom. You can flush it, keep fresh water in there all the time. So every year you should be
Right.
flushing, which I'm sure most people don't do those.
No,
Anyway, so.
no, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, I've heard you with my buyers during inspection. Usually, you're really good with that. You'll tell them like this is something you should be doing.
Yeah.
Often, how often?
Yeah.
Things to look out for, that type of thing.
Yeah, just like filter changes on furnaces, right? At least every 3 months, sometimes more often in the wintertime.
Right.
Because the furnace is running constantly in the wintertime, right?
Right.
So sometimes you even want to change the filter monthly, just during the peak winter seasons.
No, that's a good point.
But yeah, I mean, our inspection reports are full of maintenance items as well
Right.
for the buyer.
Right.
So they
Oh,
can
that's
look back at it and see what they need to maintain and how often.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
What other are some other things that buyers should kind of keep a lookout for when they're buying a new house?
I think one of the big thing too is I want to finding when buyers are going in, and I think being a real estate agent, usually prep the buyers when you're looking at the type of house, understanding we're buying a old home.
Yes.
We're buying a century home, so you got to get in that mindset. It's not a new home.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to come. Chances are, unless it's been fully gutted, we're going to find some stuff that aren't to today's standards. So just prepping them and letting them know as we go through the house. Okay, you know what? Ground fault protection devices weren't around in 1920s, but they are today, and they haven't been renovated. Those are just things to keep in mind, right? Something else I see in the basement. So basement is kind of where everything happens. That's where all the fines, everything goes on. So when you're walking in the basement, smell for that dampness. Do you smell dampness?
Right.
Is there dehumidifiers running in the basement? 1 or 2.
Right.
That might be where they're managing something.
Right.
Chances are, right?
Right.
Not always the fact, but chances are they could be managing something, right? So pay attention to that. Always looking up in the ceilings and stuff and stains and stuff. Do you see anything there? Oh, if you're in the basement, you see one wall that's been freshly painted, but everything else looks older. Why?
Oh, that's a fair point.
There's some things that you go through, and even air fresheners. There's really overpowering air fresheners in the basement. Sometimes it's
going
like,
on?
well, yeah, but not always the case. But you got to think about, okay, why is this so overpowering in air fresheners?
Right. No, it's worth at least investigating.
Yeah, definitely. So and then the other thing I'm always constantly talking about, and this is more on the exterior, is
Okay.
water management. Right.
Okay.
You're walking around the property, and if there's no downspout extensions on any of these downspouts, what sheds water down from the roof, right? Or you've got poor grading where all the all the earth and the soil is going towards the foundation.
Right.
That can be an indication of potential water problems in the basement,
I see.
right? So
Right.
little things like that to pay
Okay.
attention to as they're walking through.
Just want to keep all water away from the house and foundation if possible.
Like I always say, foundations are not boats. They're not meant to hold. They're meant to hold water.
Right.
So you've got to make sure water is always the best of your ability is always should be shedding away.
You want to set the house up for success.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, 100. You want to minimize the risk, right?
Do you have an opinion on? So you mentioned the downspouts.
Yeah.
So I live in an older home built in the '80s. So a lot of my downspouts are, I guess they're directly either they go right down into the water table, or I don't know if they're connected to the city line.
Into the weeping tile system.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So I like that, but I was on apparently cities don't like that anymore. Is that true?
All new construction, they're still doing it that way.
Oh, they're still
A lot of
doing it
them-
that way?
yeah, I
Okay.
think it depends on the builder, but most of them are still.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I prefer that.
Yeah.
I
The only thing I would say is on older, so sometimes older homes
Right.
are like that too, but they're old clay pipes. And in old areas like Toronto,
Okay.
they're known they could be getting backed up with tree roots and other things. Clay will crack and break, right?
Right.
So at that point, you watch for backups, and if it's backing up, just cut it off and put an extension on.
I see. Oh, that makes sense.
Easy
Yeah.
fix,
That's easy
really.
fix,
Yeah. But new construction, they're still doing it to the underground.
Okay. No, because I know some, like I was showing a home and it was in the wintertime and that the downspout just exited out onto the walkway. So it was all ice because of that,
Yeah.
right? So I could see
Yeah.
the benefit of just bringing
Yeah.
it right down or maybe extending it farther out.
Just farther out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of that, even another one is, splash blocks. Anybody using splash blocks, get rid of them.
Get rid of them.
There's splash blocks, these concrete ones. I've seen them specifically when they're in soil. Just the other day, I was looking at one so you have the downspout coming down, and then dumps water onto the splash block. It's like a concrete
Yeah,
rock.
I've seen them. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
they're supposed to shed water away. Well, when it's in soil and you're not managed properly, I've seen them
Right.
sink and go this way. So all the water's going down and going right back.
Right.
If you don't notice that, imagine over time, that you're just asking for
Just all
asking for trouble.
That's true.
So splash blocks,
That's true.
get rid of them.
Even I would imagine if the eaves drop system is not, I actually need to get this on my place. One of the eaves drops is just leaking. So it's,
Yeah.
to your point, it's always just going down to where the foundation is.
Yeah. These rods will leak them because they're out the corners. They're just sort of cocked on the inside,
Right.
So you can just get that redone,
Right.
But it does, that does happen. But again, that could also be with if it's holding a lot of water, if you have a lot of trees in the area and they're collecting leaves and you don't clean them out and the water's constantly sitting there. Well,
Right.
eventually they're going to leak at the corner joints
Right.
at some point.
Right. Like you said, older homes, they need some maintenance, right?
Yeah.
I guess a lot of our buyers, they're surprised by that. But,
Yeah.
even if it's, we see even homes built like 2000, 25 years old still, right? There's still things that need to be done, right?
Yeah. And like it's always, a lot of it's maintenance, right? How you take care of the house.
Yeah.
It's key because if once, like anything, right? You once you let something go, it'll continue to deteriorate, right? And then one thing will lead to another, to another, to another.
Just you pay now or pay later. And
Yeah.
usually when you're paying later, it's usually more. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
It's always more.
Always, yeah. Well, like I'm sure you know this with the cost of contracting, especially since COVID hit. Inflation. The nasty thing about inflation is, even though it's back under control, the damage is still done.
Yeah.
So things are we're getting quotes like $30,000-$40,000 just to redo a bathroom.
Yeah.
And that could easily be on your
Yeah.
radar if there was a leak, right?
Yeah.
Like it's astronomical.
We were looking to do something to our backyard, right?
Right.
We wanted to do a deck, and my girl's always bugging us for pools or a full pool. Or the big thing to me, it's a maintenance nightmare. But they want a pool
And expense.
Expensive. So we got somebody in, a couple guys in, to get some different opinions to do a deck because you always forget about you put a pool, but you got to landscape the whole backyard. Like what's like $150,000? Like I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
No, it's true. It's
Crazy.
It's crazy. My sister did her pool years ago, and it was already, large. Because, like you said, you have to do everything. You might as well. You're there, right?
Yeah.
You have to do landscaping.
Yeah,
And
and
just
landscaping is
drop
not-
a pool in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you got to think, and then I guess, of course, how you landscape will impact, but
Right.
still, landscaping is huge, right? It's a huge expense.
A lot of labor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you inspect pools, or is that outside of your purview?
No, out of my I don't do pools. I do have a guy that I would refer.
Okay.
All right, that I can refer to do pool inspections.
Is there like a pool inspector, or you would just hire an industry professional at that point, like a pool maintenance guy?
You can do
or-
a pool. Yeah, pool companies probably some pool companies might do it. The audit inspector might do pool.
Okay.
Pool. That's probably the one area that most inspectors don't do is
Right.
pool inspections. And I think I do know one couple that do,
Okay.
but not very many.
Okay, but it's not like you need a separate add-on like wet or anything like that.
Yeah,
With pool.
yeah. It's just what I got a guy that does pool inspections, or you get
Okay.
a pool company in to do it.
Okay,
Totally
you just gotta
separate.
get someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
has experience with
and
pools.
to do a full pool inspection, you can't really do it unless it's open, right? So we're in the wintertime is a hard time because you can't really do a pool inspection in the
That's true.
wintertime. So
Well, even to your point, air conditioners. Like I
Right.
just looked at a report today. We had a listing and the buyer did an inspection, but the air in the report, air conditioner couldn't be tested.
anything below 16 degrees you shouldn't because you can do damage to the condensing unit and the pump
Oh, I
that's in the
see.
AC unit
Right.
outside. So that's why any cold temperatures you should never run your AC.
So, is there as an inspector, is there anything that can be done to try and ascertain that it works properly, or it's kind of hard to tell?
Yeah, it's one of those things.
I guess you can look at it and see
Yeah.
how old it is. Perhaps,
You could look at
but-
how old it is, look at
Right.
the condition of it, right? You maybe have an idea if it's 30 years old, then
Right.
you're probably rolling the dice.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with wintertime too, is it's a lot of limitations.
Right.
Especially all the snow we recently had.
Right.
Like I went to a property up in the country, I think it was north of Beaverton, and when we had that big snowfall,
Oh yeah.
I couldn't even get close to the house.
Wow.
Like it was 3.5 feet of snow, like up to my waist, because I couldn't walk. I literally could not walk
To the house.
around to the house. I actually, some of the areas I had to
Wow.
look from the distance. It was
Oh, my
crazy.
goodness.
Yeah, it was nuts. So, but in general, there is some limitations with wintertime.
Okay.
Right? Like leaks. If we're talking about basement leaks, well, if the ground's frozen.
Right.
So for months, you're not going to know. And unfortunately, the springtime is when you're going to know. 'cause
Right,
that's
so
the
it
thaw
starts
season,
thawing,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess you would say, if possible, buy in the spring or summer. And
Buy in
fall,
the spring
maybe.
would probably
Yeah.
the best time.
Probably
right?
the best time.
But your wintertime, I mean, hey, you know what? You're going to buy a house. You can't, obviously, you're not going to, when it's time, it's time.
Right.
It's just, in the roof example, when it snows, you can't see the roof.
Can't see the roof.
So there are some
That's a fair
limitations
point.
that unfortunately, and there's been times where if some, like I'm in Durham, so if someone's local, I did one, I'll say, you know what, when the snow is gone, give me a shout. I'll bring my
back.
drone, I'll take a look for you, right?
That's
I'll come
smart,
back
yeah.
and take a look and just check it out.
So you do use the drone?
Yeah, I'll get up on the roof. Any bungalows, right? I'll get up on,
Okay.
I'll get roof, no problem. But any 2 stories, the high peak roofs, I'm not Spider-Man, so I'm not climbing on those.
No, but the
So-
drones are high
but yeah,
quality video now.
4K,
Why not? Yeah.
4K pictures,
Yeah.
video. I can see everything.
Right.
And you can get into the nice little tight areas too. Once you learn how to operate it properly,
Right.
without crashing it. I might have crashed it a few times, but
That's
once you get the feel of how to use it properly, you can really
Right.
get into those tight little areas, right?
That's
Which are
probably
nice.
better than if you were on the roof. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have, like a little DJI?
DJI
or-
3,
Okay.
Mini 3.
I
Yeah,
always wanted one, but I
Yeah.
just
yeah,
no time. So.
yeah. It takes a little while to get practice.
Well, and you're using it for business. I would just use it to screw around with, so it's not worth it for me at least. But
yeah, for sure.
Actually, speaking of equipment, so that's one of the things you use as a drone.
Yep.
What other equipment items do you use? Or-
So I have a moisture detection device,
Okay.
and the big one is a thermal imaging camera. So
what is
thermal imaging camera allows you to see heat and cool differences, right? So I can see if any areas of, let's say, the basement that are not insulated.
Okay.
I'll be able to tell if it's insulated. To the point where I can even see the framing all in between
wow.
the wall, right?
Okay.
You can see the framing because you can't insulate the framing members, so that's the cool spot. So it picks up the cool and the heat,
I
right?
see.
So you can see that area.
Oh, that's smart.
Any moisture problems, that's how I check all the heat vents, make sure the heat's coming out of the vents.
Okay.
So it's a pretty important tool for sure to use for those reasons.
Actually, speaking of the heat vents, newer construction home, I noticed they don't use the solid aluminum for the venting. They use like this. It's like insulated, flexible shit.
It depends. Was it a townhouse maybe?
It was a townhouse.
Yeah, so they have a different system though. So it's very possible that in townhouses they use a boiler system now, not even a natural
Oh,
gas.
wow, okay.
So something's just all water, or something's just a natural gas boiler system.
Okay.
And the vents are smaller, and when the
Yes.
townhouses are tall, like water, like the smaller it is, it pushes more out. So there'll be a smaller round duct system that's insulated.
Right.
It allows it to push the air farther up.
But so the builder was telling us you cannot clean those.
Yeah, it's not like a regular duct system.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would imagine. Okay, so everything's fine when it's new,
Yeah,
but
I know. I'm sure there's got to be somebody out there that can do that. I guess.
I would imagine. Well, because I
bit
have,
trickier.
I have a buddy that bought a townhome that has that system, and he was complaining. I don't know if that's the cause, but he was
Right.
complaining that so much dust in
Yeah.
the unit. And
I mean, I've seen some construction sites that if you don't clean it properly,
Right.
you're getting all the drywall dust through the system. So now
Right.
you're in there, living in it, and
Yeah.
it starts to fly around.
so there were parts of the home, I guess, in the furnace area that did have the traditional ducts, but
And then from
everything
there out, do
yes.
not, yeah.
So they were telling him when they clean the ducts, like we can't touch those other ones.
Yeah.
We can do the main stuff, but
because they're not solid, right?
That's
So
right.
they can't get down there. And clean
yeah,
it.
yeah. But like you said, I'm sure there's someone that's gonna.
It's got to be something.
Yeah. I know. I was told they're not serviceable, but that might have to change.
Yeah. It's got to be something.
Yeah, because, like I said, when everything's fine when it's new, but eventually these homes will be 30, 40, 50 years old. Now what?
And you have pets, right? All the dog hair
Yeah.
and stuff gets down there.
So what's the alternative? Do you have to replace those lines altogether? Like, that's
Yeah,
ridiculous, right?
For sure.
Wow. Okay, so any other equipment?
So drone, the moisture, then we just got stuff like a plug tester, testing all
tester.
the outlets.
And that tests if the circuit is complete?
Yeah,
or-
just seeing if you're missing any grounds, if the hot neutral reverse or reverse polarity, like what we call it. So it's wired wrong within the outlet.
Oh, wow.
So we'll check for that.
Would the
Or-
outlet still work if that was the case?
It still works, but there's a potential shock hazard because it's not technically wired properly.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
Just like missing ground. Well, either the ground it could be missing. Like I was in a house once in my area, newer area up in Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
North Whitby there, and all the upper floor was all reading one missing ground.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
It was odd. New house, right? It's not an old house. It has to have a ground because that's today's standards. All outlets have to be
Right,
grounded.
right.
But if one outlet is missing a ground, a lot of times the outlets are all in the same circuit. So one's missing, they're
all
all going to
missing.
read missing, right?
Oh,
So it could be
wow.
one problem, but it's causing other problems.
Right.
So yeah, so there's that, and then there's just there's some other small tools that we use, but in the thermal imaging, moisture detection, the
ones.
drones are probably the main
Okay.
ones.
I imagine those can save the buyer a lot of money potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found a lot of times, that's why, I run all the plumbing in the house. And then at the very end, I always go back down to the basement with my thermal gun to check because I found leaks that may not, let's see if it's vacant.
Right.
It looks fine, but plumbing hasn't
Hasn't
been
been
used in
run,
like 8
yeah.
months.
Right,
So
right,
I go
right.
upstairs, once I run all the plumbing, once I get up to the top level, and I'm done, I come back down to the basement to see if anything's leaking. I found, some leaking after the
Wow.
fact. So
Well, that's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good argument for buying a house that's being lived in because vacant, you never know, right?
vacant, you never know.
Yeah.
And usually when it's vacant a long time, not always, but sometimes
There's a
that's
reason.
we're all going to find some issues, right? When it's
I
vacant
see.
a long time,
Right.
so things aren't been operated, right? So like I said, plumbing leak. Well, it could be dry now because it hasn't been used, but you don't know.
Right,
Right.
for sure. Yeah, a lot of properties sometimes are investor owned, sometimes
Yep.
they're not even in the country. So to your point, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Do you see a lot of things that maybe homeowners have done, like hack jobs, renovations.
Yeah, like I've seen, I see, when they're retrofitting plumbing or something like that, they'll cut through joists.
Yeah.
Right. There's rules where when you're starting notching or drilling through joists, there's rules on how much and where
Right.
you can do, right?
Can't take out the whole joist.
Can't take the whole joist. You can't hack it in half
Right.
for sure anywhere.
For sure.
But you can do little notches and so depending on where along the joist you can.
I see.
But if I do, I do find that, and then sometimes I just find a lot of poor craftsmanship, right? Just doors not closing properly, and things aren't aligned and things like that. But
Actually, I was about to say, I find this a lot in the newer homes. To be honest,
Yeah.
the craftsmanship is not there.
Yeah,
Not
I would
there at
agree.
all.
I've seen both sides. It's really nice, but I've seen some that are,
Yeah.
I was did a carry on warranty maybe a couple months ago. He was living there for 8 months already.
Okay.
So it was already past closing, living there,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to do it before 1 year, right? You can do carry on warranty, or what we call the 11th month warranty. So
Okay.
before the 1 year is up, you can
Right.
put your 1 year in, they'll come back and hopefully
Yeah.
fix all the stuff,
Yeah.
all the deficiencies. Where they go to the back of the house, and none of the windows were caulked. So all the window and brick, and then just like a 1-inch gap.
Really?
Every single window and sliding door.
Oh my god.
I couldn't believe it. 8 months later, and it was still like that.
Wow. So just someone missed.
Yeah,
it.
and then no one. Yeah, so if you don't do warranty, let's say you're not, like I said, if you're not,
Right.
familiar with the house,
Right.
maybe you don't really looking for it. Right? You're not really looking for that.
That's true. Yeah.
So
Especially if you're a brand new
yeah,
buyer.
and you miss it, or if you, let's say you don't go in the backyard very often, how would you see it?
No, it's true.
So
And you expect, you expect as a new purchase, you expect everything to be on the up and up, right?
yeah, maybe not perfect, but 95% like it should be.
Caulking is pretty important.
Yeah, like that's a pretty important thing. Not only
Yeah.
just in energy and efficiency, but you're gonna get water in there, moisture. Right?
And then,
So
like we talked about, once the water's in, it
starts to
festers.
it starts to create rot and mold and all kinds of stuff. It can wreak havoc later
Yeah.
and be a big problem.
No, I agree.
Right.
Is water one of the bigger things you find, or
Yeah, I would say water is, it's probably big. That's always the number one of the, top ones on the buyer's mind.
Right.
Leaks.
Leaks.
Leak is
Right.
always on that foundation, right?
Right.
Was always a big one. Foundation is always a big one, especially on old homes. But, foundations, and cracks, right? So cracks and leaks are always like the
Top of mind.
Top of mind, right? You see a little crack. Right. But sometimes a lot of cracks aren't bad, right?
Right.
Like a lot of new, in a concrete foundation that's poured, concrete are guaranteed to do two things. It's going to get hard and it's going to crack.
Right.
Right. So when it cures, it starts to crack a little bit. So sometimes you see these very hairline vertical cracks. They're normal.
Normal.
Right. You can monitor it. If they're a little bit wide, you can seal them up just for
Right.
just for a moisture penetration point. But usually those, and as long as it's not what we call displaced or moved or shifted,
Okay.
if they're pretty flush and they're just very thin, they're usually most likely
Benign.
They're just you just
Okay.
monitor them or you could seal them up.
Right.
You know.
And eventually all houses age. Eventually you're gonna have something like that, right?
Yeah, even in the brick, sometimes we see what's called step cracking through the brick mortar joints.
Right.
Again, settlement of the house, everything's hard, so it's got to, when something's going to move or shift, it's got to give somewhere.
Right.
So usually along the mortar joints, along the brick is where they will, right? Very, very small.
Right.
Again, you can get in when you can do what's called tuck pointing. They come in, grind out the joints, refill them.
Refill them.
Some people just put caulking. Well, then you're just going to have to keep doing that
Yeah.
probably all the time, right?
Yeah.
So if you get it done properly, you just, in new homes, that brick is just a veneer, right? It's not a structure component.
Right.
It's a wood framed home.
Right.
Right. The brick and like vinyl siding is just the siding material, right?
Right.
So you just get it filled up, get it remortared, and
I see.
there you go.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess mold also maybe hand in hand with the water.
Yeah, mold, yeah, for sure. And people want to know, is there mold? And people think we can see behind walls. Always, right? Even though we have a thermal imaging gun, we still can't see literally behind the wall. We can try to do our best. If there's an active water problem, we'll see it. If we're missing insulation, we'll see it.
Right.
Any cool spots, that are missing that we, insulation, we can see it. But we can't see mold through the gun.
Right. So no tool will see mold.
No, you can get a mold test and run the air quality and
Right.
stuff like that to see.
Okay.
But even then, you can't guarantee. The only place you can really guarantee and see it is in the attic,
Right.
and that's probably a common place where I see, quite a bit. You see mold growth. It's just not venting properly. So, but anything visible, usually you'll see
Right.
in the attic.
Actually, I just thought with this. We had one where it vented in the bathroom vented into the attic.
Yeah,
It didn't
common
extend.
find.
Yeah, it didn't extend all the way through. I wonder why they would do that. Just laziness.
Yeah, I usually find that in renovations. Like attic is defined as always forgotten. That's always like it's like it's always a forgotten area, right? Especially when you renovate a house.
Right.
Attic is always, no one ever does anything with the attic. Just the other day, I did a newer one, so I had stories I can tell you all day long.
Oh, I know. I was going to ask you later about horse stories.
But yeah, but I got one. I did one the other day, newer house, but the bathroom fans, so they can go out the sides.
Yes.
They can run out the side.
Okay.
They can run out through the soffits.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as they have proper vents.
Okay.
or they can go off the roof, right? Which is most common. Nowadays, the more soffits become the more primary spot to put them.
Okay.
Trying to reduce the amount of penetrations to the roof.
Actually,
right?
I had to do
other areas.
my house was old when I did a rental. I had to get them. They didn't do the soffits.
Yeah, which is totally fine as long as it's hooked up and it's got the fan.
Yeah.
Those little tiny soffit holes, you can't depend on those to get that moisture out. You got to put a fan there, right?
Yes.
So this new house had 4 bathrooms.
Okay.
So 2 of them were going out the sides, but I could see daylight, so they weren't sealed properly.
lovely.
And the 2 going out the roof, they just had electrical cords hanging about 2 feet below the vent.
Oh wow.
So you got the fan, you got the vent, and then the roof vent this far away.
Oh my god.
like a little cord hanging in.
Wow.
Hopefully the moist air will just
Let itself out.
move itself out, climb,
Wow.
jump. Yeah, so and I've seen it cause problems. Like, again, you could fix the problem as long as you know you put it out, you fix it, right?
Right.
But if you don't know about it, like I said, who goes in their attic, right? Nobody ever goes in their attic.
No, for sure.
Nobody does. So if you don't know that, then it's just causing humidity and moisture problems. And next thing you know, it's going to have moisture stains and it's going to have mold.
I agree. So it would be good advice on the buyer maybe once a year or every other year to go in the attic and see what's going on.
Every spring, I recommend. Every
yeah.
spring after wintertime, might as well. That's when all the snow's on the roof. So
Right.
if there's any moisture
You'll know.
penetration, that's the time you're probably gonna see all the snow sitting there when you have the spring thaw.
Right. That's smart.
But yeah, always just poke your head. Go out, pick it out, just take a look around and see.
That's smart. That's very
Right?
smart. Yeah, no, that's not. So I live in a back split, so it actually has 2 attics.
Oh yeah, the one, the
Yeah.
lower level and upper level.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
lower level one is easy to get to, but the upper one you actually have to use a ladder. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, the lower ones you sometimes it's in a closet. Or
Yeah.
it's directly on the wall,
Yeah.
or something that's over the stairwell and a little easier to get into. You can just open it.
Yeah,
All
just
right,
take
look
a
in.
look. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So is that normally where you get the mold from when the stuff is venting into the attic, or just
That or
from
just
leaks
poor
as well?
ventilation, poor venting.
ventilation,
Yeah, like attics have to breathe. There's certain setups that have to be done to the attic breathe. So when it's missing a component and it's not breathing, because it's got to let fresh air in from the outside to take any warm air that loses into the attic space and take it out the roof vents, right?
Right.
So if that's not working properly, the warm air gets into the attic and it's got nowhere to go and hovers around too much.
Right.
That's what starts to create moisture problems and then eventually mold problems.
Okay. Someone told me like it should be hot. Like the attic should be hot in the summer and cold in the winter,
Yeah.
right? Like the opposite of what's inside
That's
your
right,
house.
yeah.
Okay. Good. So I told the right info.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it makes sense, right? Because it's not a climate cooled area, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why insulation levels are important. I find like in old homes, barely any insulation, right?
Right.
Or a very common one is, even in newer homes where they've insulated and now electrical guy has to go in there. Or let's say, for example, renovating,
Yes.
they got to put pot lights. So here's the contract goes in, climbs through the attic, moves all the insulation away,
Yeah.
doesn't put it back.
Right now you're losing.
Now you've got all these low spots where all the warm air is seeping up into the attic space.
Right.
Right. Well, warm, cold, condensation.
Right.
So that'll eventually cause problems.
Oh wow. So you're losing R value.
Yeah,
right?
losing R value. Yeah, your heat bills are going up,
Right.
and you're losing a lot of heat into the attic space, which is probably going to cause eventually moisture problems.
Right. So do you mind explaining what our value is for the?
Yeah, the R value is how much insulation level you put into your house.
Right.
Right now they use blown-in insulation.
Okay.
So R60, which is around 16 to 18 inches, is kind of what today's standard. Sometimes
Okay.
you'll even see up to 22 inches.
Okay.
But R60 is around the same. So codes change, or I shouldn't say code. Sorry, we don't do code inspections. Standards change over the
change.
years, and the R value increases. Right.
Okay.
So
So
that's what that is. The R value is how much insulation level is in your
there.
attic.
So the higher the R value inferior, the
better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the standard kind of right now is R60.
Yeah.
You're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of homes with that, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see a lot of old ones.
Well,
that
the
get
new ones, I guess,
New
yes,
ones,
but-
yeah, new ones are, and that's, here's a story for you. In Leaside, right? I did an
Okay.
inspection in Leaside, East Toronto
Right.
area. Old home, but it was fully gutted. Like it was beautifully,
That's a good job, okay.
yeah, it was beautifully done though. Like you could, a lot of times when I walk through the home, you start opening doors, you can feel like it
Yes.
feels nice,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's opening, closing nicely. You feel that
Quality.
gentleness. Yeah, the quality was great. And I always end my inspections up in the attic. So when I get to the attic space, I get up there, no insulation. They forgot.
They forgot.
Or if there was some oversight,
Right.
and the installation contractor never came, and no one followed up.
Oh wow.
There's no insulation. And this is a new couple from, I think they moved in from England.
Oh wow.
Know nothing about homes.
Right.
They never probably would have ever stepped foot in the attic. And I had to tell them that, so they came in 2 days, it was fixed. I went back to check
Right.
for them, it was fine.
It's amazing.
But if you didn't know that,
They would have never known.
in 5 years down the road, you would have big mold problems in there,
Oh wow.
big time. And you'd be spending probably twice as much on your heat bills.
Yeah.
So you
Double
never know.
whammy.
Yeah.
Double
So
whammy,
you never know what you're gonna find.
Wow. No, it's true though. That's the value in having an inspector come.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And one that actually, I would imagine, in real estate, realtors are not all the same. I would imagine that's the same is true with inspectors. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, not everybody's the same. I mean, I think we all generally have, we're all trained, right? We
Right.
hope we're all trained. Again, it's not regulated in Ontario, right?
Right.
But if you are, there's most things that we're gonna find. But
Okay.
then, every inspector, like anything's got their own opinion, maybe on
Right.
certain stuff.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
But the main stuff, I would like to say that we're all gonna probably find similar
Okay.
stuff. But then
That's good.
you've got, like you said, different, like the importance. Somebody else might be on a little different level,
I see.
right?
Everyone, yeah, I guess everyone varies. a little
Yeah,
bit, right?
and that's why it comes important when it comes to talking to buyers about fines. It's how you
Yes.
explain them to the buyers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not saying, oh, no groundfall protection in this house.
Right.
You don't want to buy it,
not the end
you
of the-
know,
yeah, it's
or
not the end of the
it's
day.
all about explaining, understanding old standards, today's
Mm-hmm.
standards. I'm not saying tomorrow you have to go do it,
Right.
but if you want, for safety to today's standards, you may want to look at doing that. So, it's all about explaining and talking, how to talk to your buyers.
Right. Well, I was to your point. I was talking to our receptionist Amanda upstairs before you came, and she mentioned we were talking about home inspections, and I told her because I told her I was having you on, and she said, yeah, when we were selling our house, we heard through the Ring doorbell camera the inspector for the buyer that was going to buy our house, and he was talking to them, and they had like I think they had a small crack in the foundation. It was like an older home, and the inspector was saying to the buyers like, oh, run away from this house, it's going to collapse. And she's like, come on, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's a fines. Houses are not going to collapse.
no.
right?
No. I think they're built overall fairly well, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, old homes, like over time, like you're going to see slopey floors in old homes.
Right.
But like a lot of times where it's really bad is because it's what people have done to the house.
That's true.
Since.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
That's usually the big thing. You're not doing things probably. You can't just, if the structure, you need to fix the structure, you can't just jack it up somewhere and put the, because
Right.
now you're going to compromise the other structure areas of the home, right? So there's certain ways you have to do. You can't just go in there and
You have to do it properly.
got to do
You
it
can't
properly.
Yeah, we see a lot of hack rental jobs where it was almost better if you just left it as is.
Yeah.
Because now most likely it has to be ripped out and redone anyways. So
Yeah, it's going to cost more money and
yeah,
time.
we see a lot of stuff like that. I noticed inspectors don't really comment too much. Maybe you do. Don't really comment too much on like the finishings of the home if it's not really done the best. I guess that's kind of outside of your purview.
Well, we don't really. Yeah, I mean, we don't really talk about the cosmetic stuff.
Right.
Right.
That's what I
might
meant,
say
yeah.
in passing, might say, but it's all about functionality
Right.
and safety.
Right.
So
Okay.
when I wrote out code by accident, we don't do code inspections, right? We're not a code inspector. That's a building inspector.
Sure.
We're standard. Like we would look for the standards, city standards, but it's more of a safety. Is everything functioning properly and working? But cosmetic stuff, yeah. I mean, we don't really.
Overlook it, yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that it's not really part of the inspection.
Yeah, I guess you're not there for that. You're there because the buyer already looked at that. They're okay with that. They're
Yeah. The only time that we're really on that stuff is a tear on warranty.
okay.
Right.
Oh, right.
That
Fair
stuff, 30 days because they should come back and fix anything because
Right.
it's got to be like almost perfect, right? We
Yes.
talked about. So anything like that, yes.
Yeah.
Nail pops and things like that. But now it's it's funny because sometimes they'll have buyers will what about this? What about that? Scratch on the floor. And I have to say I'm
Yeah.
not here to
Get to that,
I
yeah.
understand there's a scratch on the floor, but we're not going to document that because it's a scratch on the floor.
No, for
Go
sure.
home. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely.
Functionality and safety is
Functionality
really
and safety.
is really what we're looking at.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're the whole point of inspection for me is to protect your investment. So
Yeah.
that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
exactly, right? And cosmetic stuff, I mean, it's
Cosmetic could be done.
yeah. It's not you're not gonna buy the house because it's scratched on the floor.
No, exactly. And now with everything being so expensive, sometimes I advise the clients, listen, if you want more bang for your buck, look for something that's, is a little like move-in ready, but a little rough around the edges. And over time you can inspect as long as the bones are good.
Yeah.
Foundation's good, everything's good. Then,
Yeah.
over time you can slowly renovate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think that's usually what's the most important is the bones good. It's the structure and the foundation and stuff. Because everything on the inside, over time, you can fix. You don't like it, you can move it, you can do this, whatever.
Exactly. I always tell clients too, as long as if it's a good area and good location and good layout, those are two things you can't really fix. The rest is,
Yeah,
doable.
yeah. The area is a big one too, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You said your area, you do GTA.
Yeah, so I'm in Durham. I grew up in GTA. I grew
Okay.
up in Toronto my whole
nice.
life.
Okay.
So like Avenue Road and 401 area is
Right.
kind of where I grew up.
Okay.
But went to school at Bathurst, and family always grew up in our family was in Mount Pleasant and Davisville, Young,
nice.
that
Okay.
area. So I grew up. I was always in Toronto.
Right.
I said I would never live out east.
Oh,
Or back then I mean a long time ago, there wasn't a ton out there anyway. And I
Right.
said, "There's no way I would live out in Whitby. Are you crazy? No way."
but now it's changed.
Now I'm in Whitby, and I'll never move back to the city.
Right. Interesting how things work, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I worked in Leaside for many years.
Oh, wow.
Eglinton and Laird, right? So, And I got out of there just and I used to live there a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
But we got out of there when the LRT started along Eglinton there.
Oh,
What
I
a
see.
disaster
Which is
that
still
was.
going on.
Still going on. What is it, 10 years later?
Oh my God.
So, yeah, so
about that.
we're on Whitby. But yeah, I work in Durham Region and even in like Kawartha Lakes, but I go into GTA quite a
Okay,
bit as well.
nice,
I got some
nice.
partners I work with in Toronto. So.
Nice. Toronto.
Yeah.
I do work in Toronto, but it's getting harder and harder. It's so congested. I
Oh,
find.
oh yeah. That's why when I go in there, I try to go in a certain time.
Yes,
don't
I'm
wanna-
very picky. Yes,
I don't want to be there till 5 p.m.
No, no, you
Not
don't
too
wanna,
early. I'm kind of want to be there sort of the late morning is like the sweet spot. So I can
Yes.
get in without so much traffic and get out before traffic
That's
starts.
smart. Yeah, no, that's very smart.
So,
Do you actually? Speaking of Toronto, condos.
Yep.
Because I've done some inspection on
Yeah,
condos.
yeah.
Do you think it's worthwhile to do an inspection on a condo?
you know what? Again, it just comes to education, right?
Right.
Depending on, I mean, yeah, there's a lot less to look at in a condo, obviously.
A lot of things are not your responsibility.
Right. So if that was part of the condo, it's part of the what you pay the monthly fees for
Yes.
and all that, right? But that's just a matter of checking everything on the inside and
Right.
working properly, right?
Okay.
But I found washing machines leaking. I found ground fault protection devices aren't working and
Okay.
outlets loose, and so yeah, it's obviously we charge a lesser fee. We don't charge as much for doing condos,
Right.
and there's less to look out. But yeah, I don't do a ton of condos. I do
Okay.
some, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are. It's a condo.
No, for sure.
There is less. There is less.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what? Listen, I'll be honest with you. When I first got involved in the industry, I didn't think it was necessary to do a condo. But after getting a few done, I do see the value in it. The main thing I see, it wasn't so much that the inspector found, because Trevor did one for me,
Okay.
and not so much that he found like a deal breaker. I found it was very beneficial to my buyer. They were first time home buyers, and he made them feel very comfortable with the house.
Yeah.
And these are things you need to do to maintain it.
Yeah.
And okay, here's a little thing, but it was just like the shower valve didn't have caulking around it.
Right.
So he's like, it's something you can do it on your own time. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you would do the same thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was more valuable than anything, to be honest.
That's probably more of an education and how to maintain it.
Exactly.
Basically.
And they valued that because the first time home buyer, they're sweating.
Sure,
They're
of course.
sweating.
Like, oh my God, I gotta own something now. I'm paying all this
Yes.
money for it, and now it's
Exactly.
mine. And it's not
Exactly.
like it's rental where I can call the landlord, he'll come fix it.
Right, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, in theory, yes, yeah, they would fix it.
Yeah.
But no, now it's yours,
Yeah.
right? And
sure.
especially with condos now, where we're advising clients, you got to hold it for the long run. You can't just flip it. There's no flipping anymore, even with freehold. So
Yeah.
you got to make sure what you're buying is good.
Yeah,
You can't screw around anymore. The market's not like that.
yeah.
So
definitely.
yeah, no, but I mean, we were talking about this before. Home inspectors saved my ass. I was looking at investment property, and that was a funny story. Yeah, so it was a house in Newmarket, and so I went. It was during the hot market, or kind of when the hot market was kind of tailing off, but it was still hot. They didn't want you inspecting it if you didn't have to. So I had an inspector at the time before I knew you. And he came in, and I already could tell something was wrong because I went to the basement. It was carpet in the basement, which I don't like. I don't understand why people do that, but hope I don't offend anyone with carpet in the basement. But just my personal choice. But it was damp, and there was like 4 dehumidifiers running, and I'm like, okay, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So thank God got the inspector to come, and sure enough, I think he found it through because it was a finished basement, but then I think the cold cellar was obviously not finished, so you could very easily see that there was water seeping through.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I called the listing agent. He's like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with the house, nothing at all." I asked, "Okay, so why is the floor damp and all the dehumidifiers?" And he's like, "Oh, the owner got them steam cleaned and was just drying them out." I'm like, all right, well, and you could tell he was just like plugging his ears, didn't want to know about it, because then once they know about it, they're legally
Disclose it. They have to disclose it, yeah.
exactly, obligated to do so.
Yeah.
So he was being a bit of a prick that way. Because I offered to him, I said, "Listen, I'll give you the inspection, for your not didn't want it." So, but thank God I dodged the bullet because I like that house, and I would have overpaid for it if it wasn't for the inspector. So you guys are very valuable.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a mistake to not include an inspection.
No, for sure. I mean, usually when buyers go in, it's you're buying a house, you're looking at the staging. It looks all great. It looks, you're looking at the high level stuff. It looks, you're not looking for that stuff. Sometimes you don't, and you don't know what you're looking for, and that's why we come in, right?
No, for sure.
We're trained to look and find certain things, and something seems off.
No, absolutely.
I got my own little dehumidifier
tell me.
a story where I did one in the basement, and there was a dehumidifier running.
Okay.
But the weird thing was, it was lined up along the wall. Like usually when you run a dehumidifier, usually in the middle of the room, trying to capture as much moisture. So let's say you're just managing, because sometimes basements are just damp.
Yeah.
Right? Like I
Yeah.
remember my first house was damp. There was no leak or anything. It was just
Right.
damp.
Damp,
The garage
yeah.
door was in.
Yeah.
Wasn't a metal door. So you could have a dehumidifier just to help,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Manage the moisture levels.
I even noticed in the summer sometimes the AC on, sometimes it gets a little.
Yeah, for sure. So this case, it was literally, but it was only directed right along the wall behind a sofa.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
technically, as inspectors, it says in our standards of practice, we're not allowed to move things.
Okay.
But I have a limit. I have a certain degree when it comes to that. Yeah, I'm not going to move a 400-pound armoire that's along the wall.
Right.
We're not, because if we damage something, it's on us, right?
But it's a couch.
But it's a couch. Yeah, I might scratch the floor, but I'm here for the buyer, and I'm here to do the best job I can for them. And if there's an issue I'm suspecting,
Right.
I'm going to move that damn couch.
Yeah, that's right. It's worth,
Right? Lo and behold, I moved the whole couch out of the way, and yeah, you can see it bubbling all in behind. So they used the couch to cover it and had the dehumidifier running along the wall and hoping it was going to dry it all up before people started probably coming to the house, right? So yeah, you never know.
They're probably better off just hiding with the couch and not running the dehumidifier.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't think. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just because the dehumidifier caught you on, right?
Pretty much caught me. I mean, so I don't know. Again, I didn't do a full thermal because I already knew it was a water problem. So I just went right to the source and pulled it out. I knew it was a water problem. Wasn't no point doing a thermal because I already knew it was a water issue around there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe not. It's hard to say. But yeah, technically we're not allowed to move couches, right? So, but if I sense something, then I'm going to do whatever I can to find it. Right?
No, it's amazing.
Find to get in there and figure out what it is.
Well, because we're the same way that we work for the best interest of our client, right? So you want the best for them.
Yeah, even though it says, you're not, like I said, technically we're not supposed to move stuff, and inspectors will say, it's in the way, right? I'll do two at a time. I mean, like, sometimes I'll go in the room and it's jam-packed. I'm not clearing a room out.
No.
Okay? I don't have time to, I'm not going to do that. No. But I'm going to move some stuff out of the way if I feel that it needs to be moved.
No, absolutely.
Right? And even the carpet one, where I bring up where the buyer brought me over. Oh yeah, there's a wet spot in the carpet, just one little wet spot, maybe something spilled. We're not sure, but we just want to double check. Well, lo and behold, it was a water leak from the wall.
Oh, wow.
They couldn't tell, and you can't really tell, but with my thermal gun, it was all, you could see the blue mark, which is like water, all over one whole side. So from what they thought was just small, was a bigger problem.
Right.
So
it was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
no, there's value.
home inspections are important.
They are very important. No, I mean, for especially the cost relative to what you could find and save, it's negligible, right?
Yeah. You know what? To be honest, we're the cheapest of all.
Oh, really? Okay.
Lawyers, mortgage.
Oh, yes.
As that goes, that's right. But that's what I mean by all the things you have to pay for buying a house, we're the cheapest.
And
technically, right?
No, and probably the most valuable, to be honest, in that with respect to actual home itself.
Yeah, to the home itself, for sure.
No, absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important for a seller to do a pre-purchase inspection? Because that's what some of my packages include that, like my higher percentage packages for listing. I found it beneficial for the seller even. Do you guys do a lot of those?
Yeah, I do quite a bit of. I promote it.
Okay.
We have a pre-listing sign that we actually put on the property.
Oh, cool.
Beside your for sale sign.
Oh, okay.
Helps promote it. So when people are driving around doing open houses, they'll drive around and they'll see that it's been pre-inspected.
Right.
To help drive people. Oh, it's been inspected. Great. I might not have to do one. The issues, some things. It depending on the area. I know in Toronto you find a lot of pre-listing inspections in Toronto. I think it's quite regularly to have one in Toronto.
Yep.
It's a bit newer out where I am. It's a bit of a harder sell out kind of where I am. I do work with a ton of awesome partners that do them on a regular basis.
Okay.
I think especially if you move a lot of properties, you don't want to deal with a lot of, so pre-listing test helps move things along quicker what they're designed to do. Mm-hmm. And they're designed to trust in the report.
Yes.
But I know sometimes there's the old stipulation because sometimes I hear, the seller's inspector did the inspection.
Yes.
The seller's, is it just high level? Did we brush over? You know what I mean? There's still a bit of that stigma
for sure.
In the passive. It's a pre-list, but my reports are very detailed. When I do a pre-listing inspection or for the buyer, it's the same.
Right.
Same detail, same report, either way, because we're there for both sides. We want everything to go through, seamlessly on both sides. We want to present the house. This is the way it is. You price the house according to my report, or at least my report helps in pricing the property. Okay, if it needs a new roof, you're not going to change it.
No, of course.
You can probably price it to that, right? Sure. And it's going to be relative in the report. So the buyer should be able to have the big picture. Mm-hmm. They know exactly what's going on. Transparency. That's what they're designed to do.
No, absolutely.
Now, mind you, it's not always a perfect science, but that's what it's designed to do. But yeah, I do a ton of them.
Yeah. Well,
that's awesome. I'm a big fan of them.
Nice. Well, I always tell buyers and sellers, listen, the inspection is thorough, but there are things that can be missed. You always have to take it with a grain of salt. But for the seller, we find it beneficial because the inspector will come through, and then there might be some really easy fixes. like if there's, you know, you need a new GFCI plug or, you know,
Smoke
caulking
detectors or
yeah,
whatever.
smoke detectors or even the big stuff, you know, maybe, hey, the roof is probably going to need to be changed. So maybe they decide to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And what I actually do as part of my package, if you want to, and I've had times where I found mold in an attic, well, they actually hired a company, come in and they cleaned it all up.
it's amazing.
Right? Spend a couple grand or whatever
Yeah.
it costs to do it. But it's worth it to do it, then I have to leave it and then questions and then that just causes a bit of
No,
just
it's
clean up
true.
and if you want to do it. But what I will do as part of my package, I'll actually, update the report accordingly. So if
awesome.
your seller, let's say smoke detectors are 30 years old, right?
Right.
Every 10 years they should be replaced. So they want to replace them. I come back and verify if I can do by picture and prove it, then I'll update the report before listing,
It's awesome, yeah.
right? It just sort of helps. And that's why we do it, to help prepare the property
Right.
for sale.
No, it's smart.
It sort of goes hand in hand with photography and staging, all that. It's just another piece of the pie,
Another element,
right?
yeah.
To help
A
to move it.
very important element that gets
Yeah.
overlooked sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, no, because you know what? Sometimes buyers are a little skittish.
Yeah.
And justly so. So you know what? Like if you can avoid that whole scenario where they find mold in the attic, or when you could have just dealt with it before it even went on the market.
Yeah.
Just a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
You know, why would you want to risk
Yeah.
that? You want to try and get top dollar for your home.
Yeah.
These are things you need to do, right?
Yeah. And I've picked up a lot of buyers from my pre-listing inspections,
Oh, awesome.
where buyers were very happy with how my reports are. Our reports are very detailed, right? They're color
Yes, I've seen your reports,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
color coded, prioritizing what may be most important, the least important, all color coded, and maintenance items, all kinds of pictures of everything.
Right.
So I've actually picked up buyers who maybe didn't get the property that had my pre-listing inspection, but they were impressed with it.
Right.
So they would call me then when they were putting
awesome.
an offer into that. So
Yeah, because I think the inspection reports are not standardized in the industry, right? They're everyone's can be different.
oh yeah, they can they can all look different.
Like a buyer's choice one will be one
They're all
thing,
the same.
but if it's a different company, that'll be
It
different.
could be like a little different because there's different softwares that people use.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
Then the layout might be different. I've seen some that were like 3 pages and no pictures.
So you guys are so you guys are more thorough. is
Yeah,
fair
I mean,
to say.
I'm sure there's other
Sure.
there's other good companies out there. Not to knock anybody, there are some pretty solid, other good inspection companies
sure.
out there, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, our reports are very easy to read, color code. They're just easy for the buyer to look through. Okay, roof is a priority.
Yeah.
Caulking around the windows is not really a priority, but maybe do it the next available time.
sure,
Things like that. So it helps them get a bigger picture. What may be most important, least important.
Yeah. No, I read your inspection. I thought it was very important when I first met you. Did that inspection on the house in Aurora? I think it was. No, I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
So, it needs to be good for everyone, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
no, it's awesome. Yeah, no, for sure. So things we touched upon a little bit. So what are things that you don't cover as an inspector? So we mentioned wet certificates or anything kind of wood burning, fireplace, that type of thing, pool.
So I do septic inspections,
Okay.
but I don't do a full well inspection.
Okay.
I have a guy that I'll refer.
Okay.
He's actually well and septic. So if somebody, like a lot of times with dug wells, a little different than drilled wells.
Okay.
Right. Dug wells are more susceptible for running dry. So you want somebody who's sort of experienced in that area to look at the dug well.
Okay.
Right? Drilled wells are a little bit not as they're a lot deeper. You get a little bit different, right? They're more reliable than
Okay.
dug wells.
Okay.
But I do septic inspections. So wells, one thing, pool, like water softeners. We don't really inspect water
Okay.
softeners.
Let's do that.
All just, see if it's leaking or anything. But
Sure.
that's another main routine maintenance that someone should be looking at every year.
Right.
I don't do we don't, some inspectors might do mold and actual mold inspections.
Okay.
I don't do that. I'll refer to somebody, but if I suspect it looks like mold. Like
Then
you can't
you refer.
confirm it. You can't confirm unless you test it, but I've been around long enough that I could probably guess that it most likely is.
No, for sure.
But I'll detect it if I see it. I don't do physical testing, but every inspector might do some things a little differently. And
No,
air
for
quality is another big one. We do like a basic air quality, but
Okay.
you can get another company that specializes in that to do a full air quality type inspection.
I see.
We do radon testing. So radon testing is just sort of there's 2 ways you can do it. The one we do is just sort of within a couple hours that you're there, just gives an initial reading.
Okay.
And then you can also do a longer, which is called a 90-day test. So there's a few different types of tests you can do for that.
What is radon again? I remember.
Yeah,
vaguely.
so radon is a natural occurring gas that comes down from the bedrock. Nothing causes it. It's natural.
Okay.
And it can be detected and can be anywhere in any property.
Okay.
The thing to know is every house has a level of radon.
Right.
Every house.
Okay.
You just want to know what that level is. There's a certain level, as per Health Canada, when it reaches and goes beyond the certain level, which is measured in, one way they measure it is in becquerels. So anything over 200 becquerels
Okay.
is considered elevated levels.
Okay.
Then you should probably look at a mitigation.
Okay.
Okay. So, but every house has a level.
Okay.
Okay. You just need to know what that level is.
I see. And make sure it's not over that threshold.
Over that threshold,
Okay.
because then, if it's sort of mediocre, like in the mid area, then what I can recommend to the buyers doing is doing a 90-day test, because I'm just doing it for 2 hours, just a
Right.
quick initial sniff, right?
Okay.
But if there's still some questions, what they can do next is a 90-day, which now is it's a longer test, because now you're checking the peaks and the valleys
Right.
through the house.
Okay.
And wintertime is always a better time to do it, because the house is actually under negative pressure. The problem is when you're in the summertime, I'm doing a test and they've had windows open, well, you're actually not letting a lot of that radon outside.
Okay.
So doing it in the wintertime is actually a better time to do it when you're under negative pressure and you're not opening the windows.
I
Right?
see.
You get a more accurate reading.
Okay, that's smart.
But the good thing about radon, it can be mitigated.
Okay.
I believe out in Calgary, out in Alberta, I've seen some houses, new construction, they're actually putting rough-ins for radon already as part of the construction
Like to
process.
test- for testing?
Yeah, just rough-ins.
Oh,
So if you
wow.
have a high level, the piping's already there, because
Oh, what is the solution?
yeah,
for
so
that?
basically, maybe we should start with what's this? Let me back up. So the solution for that is basically what they're doing is they're drilling a hole into the concrete floor
Okay.
with a PVC pipe and a fan. Just
Oh,
in simple terms, and
Okay.
then it goes outside, so it becomes a permanent fixture of the house.
Oh, so it just vents
like
it
a furnace,
out.
vents it outside.
Okay.
It pulls it out of the ground and shoots it outside.
Oh, interesting.
So in Alberta, they're putting rough-ins for it.
Is it prevalent in Alberta? I guess,
Yeah,
or-
I think
okay.
out there you're probably finding there are a lot of areas you are finding some high levels.
Oh, okay.
You can actually see you can actually look on the net and find a graph. It'll tell you where all the suspected high spots and low spots are.
Have you seen any in the GTA?
Yeah, in Oshawa, I've
Oshawa,
found
yeah.
over 2 houses. I've come across over 1,000.
Oh wow. And the threshold, the minimum was the
200,
maximum was 200. Oh wow.
Anything over 200. Yeah. So
They make you feel sick, or what is the?
no, so it's the second leading cause of lung cancer in
Oh
Canada.
wow. Okay.
Okay, not guaranteed, but your risk is that. But that's
Elevated,
known to be
okay.
second. Yeah, but you got to be around high levels for a long period
Long
of time,
long
right?
exposure. Okay.
But there's been, I think in the news last year, there's some people got cancer, and there was rumors about it could be radon.
Oh, wow.
Right, but it's years around high levels,
I see.
right?
Okay.
So that's why you just need to know. But it's still new. Like a lot of people don't know much about it. When I talk to buyers and I talk about most of the time, no one knows anything about it.
No, yeah.
So when I do a testing, I have a little link that I provide in the report. They can click on and read more about it.
Okay.
What causes, what they can do about it, right? Just
for sure.
knowledge.
No, it was something that was touched upon lately in like real estate schooling, but it was kind of like an FYI type of thing.
Just
yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. But no, it's good to know, right?
Yeah, no, it's just one of those things. Just like you like to know, if you got high levels, then that's your forever home. Mm-hmm. You may want to do something about it.
But it's good to know. Right. It's good to know that you can mitigate it.
You can mitigate it, and the price will depending on how the base. If it's all unfinished, it'll be cheaper because it's easy. If it's finished, it'll probably be more expensive because then they got to do some work to set it up. But if it's unfinished, then it's right. Everything's visible.
So maybe that's a good idea if you're thinking about finishing your basement. Maybe get it tested for radon first, and because you never know.
Yeah, you don't know. Like across the street could be different than your neighbor.
Right.
Like, you don't know where it is.
Okay. It could be that variable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because out in east in Port Hope, back in the 90s, Port Hope was known as a dumping ground for radioactive soil. Okay.
Oh.
So they found high levels of radon
wow.
out there. So till to this day, they have certain areas, big, massive development areas where they're cleaning the soil.
Oh, wow.
Right? Remediating the soil. So if you buy a house in Port Hope, most homes are going to have a letter about radon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that says it's been tested. They'll have like a
that's cool.
stamped letter.
Oh, they're getting ahead of it. at
Yeah.
least. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and remediation is huge. Even when we get into environmental and stuff, oh god, getting the tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I know.
So
Yeah, for sure.
actually, when I was doing real estate schooling, they told us a story. So it was like a commercial. You doing okay for time? Okay. It was a commercial sale, and the land was previously a gas station. And it had underground tanks. It was leaking. So, but unbeknownst to everyone, there was a developer had bought it and wanted to develop. They had to do level 1 and turn to level 2, and then they discovered that there was contamination, but underground there was like an underground stream.
Oh.
And it was contaminated the stream, and it contaminated all the properties downstream from that. So they had to remediate all of those properties.
Crazy.
It got I forget the amount, but I think it was like tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. It was crazy. It was just like an example, like do your due diligence.
Yeah, yeah.
So on a smaller scale, do your due diligence for a home inspection. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you what are some horror stories, inspection horror stories? Do you have any? Everyone wants the juicy stuff.
Everyone wants the juicy stuff.
Like, what's the worst shit you've seen?
Well, crawl spaces are always usually where
Yeah.
things can happen, right?
Okay.
I've been in a crawl space where, I did a cottage once where, the foundation, looked, when I first went up to it, I'm looking at it as a crawl space. It was a poured concrete foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was foundation, right? Poured
Okay.
concrete foundation, crawl space. But you can see the aggregates right through the actual concrete, the stones.
Okay.
Right?
So there's no basement. It was just.
It's a crawl space. Yeah,
Just
it's
crawl
like
space,
two,
okay.
2.5 feet
Okay.
tall. You gotta
Okay.
crawl in there, right? And you can see some little bit of crumbling, right? It's like, oh, maybe the concrete didn't set properly, or wasn't cured, properly, or whatever, or the mix wasn't right, And I go in the crawl space, and I can literally take my hand, and it was just crumbling.
Oh my God.
Like on all sides.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think the mix was very good, and so when they poured it, it wasn't. I guess
It didn't set
it
properly,
didn't
yeah.
set properly, and it was literally just crumbling.
How old
Crazy.
is the cottage?
It was old.
It was old,
It
okay.
was older.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it was like I don't know how it got to that point.
Wow.
I don't know if it was redone or something like that. But anyway, it was good. So I had to come up. I was just like, because we were all talking about it when I saw on the outside. I said, oh, it's a little crumbling
Right.
here. I see over here. Yeah, I was telling you, you can see the aggregates through. You
Right.
shouldn't see that. It should be
Right.
smooth, right?
Right.
So I said, well, when we go to the crawl space, we'll investigate. I usually go in the crawl space at the end again with the pole plumbing leak thing.
I see.
I go at the very end once I run everything, right? And check. So and then, I've been into one crawl space. I think it was out East Belleville or somewhere where you go in there, it was full of water.
Oh, wow.
Posts are just rotted,
Oh,
rusted.
wow.
The joist, I could take my poker and stab right through it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
Were there any indications inside the house that there was further trouble in the crawl space, or like where the floor is
no,
uneven, or
a little
weak
bit,
spot?
but
Yeah,
a little
okay.
bit, but nothing because it's a progressing thing, right?
Right.
But there's a little bit on sloping floors, which you got to take with a grain of salt, but it all depends, right?
Depends, okay.
That's why you have to go downstairs to see.
See.
When you first see the sloping floors, then you got to go underneath and kind of see.
See what's going
Is
on.
it just sediment over the years, or is there really something causing that?
I
So,
see.
yeah, all that water, in a crawl space just creates all that humidity and just create wood rot and deterioration. Never good.
Are squeaky floors usually, like if the subfloors are squeaky?
A lot like my subfloor is squeaky.
Yeah.
It's really annoying.
Yeah.
But I know it's because they didn't put enough nails in the subfloor.
Right.
So when they screw down the subfloor to the joist, you got to put a ton of nails to make sure it's tight.
Right.
Because even over time you're walking over, it's going to be a little bit loose, right?
Mm-hmm,
So usually squeaky floors is because the subfloor is not screwed tight enough down to the joist.
I see. 'Cause I see some homes sometimes there's a little dip. Sometimes the buyers are walking like, why is a little dip?
Well,
Why
now,
is it squeaking?
yeah.
You know?
So it depends. Like newer homes like mine, I get squeaking. Like
Right.
mine's only a 20-year-old
Oh,
house,
okay.
but I know that's the reason.
Right.
Right. But when you get older homes, yeah, then it could be a whole different thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? The joist could have settled away from the beam a little bit.
Right.
It could be, and sometimes it's on the second floor you can't see.
Right.
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 So sometimes, it's hard to
Yeah.
really say.
Yeah.
A lot of times old homes, they settled and they're not really moving anymore. We always recommend someone check it out because you really don't know.
Oh, for sure.
It's really hard to say.
Well, because we looked at one house and it was so luckily it was the main floor, so we went in the basement and everything looks fine.
Yeah.
Everything looked fine underneath. And the inspector's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, but it was just it's just
Yeah.
I guess one of those quirks of the home, right? So
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I really painted, like I've been in some where, every floor like this, right? Like that. One floor is going this way, you go next floor is going this way. Now there's
something's going on,
There's
yeah.
there's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
going on, right? So, but in home, that's why it's you're not gonna have perfect floors in old
No.
homes, right? There's gonna be some settlement and it's gonna happen. You just want to make sure as you're walking through the house, it's not substantial, right?
Right.
That it could be.
Right. Any other ones that stand out?
I do so many. I don't know. There's there's tons. I mean,
You showed some on social media that are interesting.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think here.
Like any deal breakers for where the buyer had to walk away because of it? Or?
Well, I did one. Okay, so I did one house. I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, out in east. Out in the country always seems to be.
Always seems to be out in the country.
Out in the country, down by the water, out by the lake. That's always seems to be
Interesting.
going
Okay.
on there. In certain areas. To be honest, there's certain areas when I can call to. I know. I'm like.
Oh, you're like, brace
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. You look it up on MLS. You look at the house. Like, I brace myself. You say, okay.
Okay. I know what I'm going to into.
Full focus, right? Going in. You just know.
Of course.
But yeah, you go in the basement, and there's literally a river running through the basement.
Oh my God.
Like it was just, and I guess some people they manage it, they just live with it, right? Wow. But when I go to the back, the foundation was like this, right?
Wow.
So that was one problem. And then when you go down in the
Wow.
basement, it's sort of one of those old homes where it probably was a crawl space. Then they made a basement, so it's half and half.
Oh, wow.
But from the crawl space, you can just see they're just continuing. So the sump pump is just like working constantly because there's so much water pouring into it.
Wow.
So again, I was, telling them, you yeah, you want to fix it properly, then you're probably gonna need to waterproof the whole thing. And waterproofing is not a cheap job. That's a $40,000 plus job, specifically if you do it from the exterior, which is always the preferred.
Yeah, I think it's like 10,000 aside or something like that.
Yeah. You can do it from the inside. Usually insides or maybe certain areas or maybe a small crack that's caused a little bit. You can kind of waterproof to one sort of section.
Right.
And it also depends on what you can afford and what you want to pay
Of course.
too as well.
Yeah.
But inside is okay, but the water's still coming through. You're just bypassing it underneath the foundation, underneath the
Right.
slab, right?
Right.
To the drainage system. But on the outside, really stops from coming in. That's always the preferred, but it's cost more money.
Yes, of course.
So it all depends. But this one house, yeah, it needed a full wrap.
Oh, wow.
Like it was just, I don't know where the water was coming from, but
It's coming from somewhere.
I should have brought rain boots that day.
Wow, is that bad?
Yeah.
Actually, it reminds me of a story. My buyer didn't end up buying it, but it was a house in Grimsby, and it was one of those things where if someone bought the home, and it was privately financed, and it was always meant to be like a gut and reno and flip, but I guess they bought it in the hot market and no inspection.
Yeah.
So this is why you get inspection.
Yeah.
There was water permeating all four walls, but it was so bad that the foundation walls were starting even to kind of cave in.
Yeah.
So he did not budget for that, ran out of money, and the house went under power of sale. So I had a buyer that was actually interested in buying that house, and they went beyond the inspector. They had like specific professionals to say, okay, this is exactly
Foundation
what's
guy
gonna
or something, yeah.
structural engineer and stuff to report, and it was in there, and it was like $80,000 to $100,000 to remediate.
Yeah.
And my client kind of wanted to do the work himself. I said, you can, but you can, but it's are you going to get a mortgage now?
Yeah.
It opens up a whole can of worms. So he ended up not doing it, but it's just an example of the trouble you can run yourself into.
Yeah. I mean, several times I've found where we talk about the foundations caving in. Usually that's caused by ground pressure. Again, we talk about water management on the outside.
Right.
If you have poor grading, water sits around the foundation through the freeze-thaw cycle.
Yes.
It constantly thaws and freezes and thaws and puts pressure on the foundation where it'll start to bow in.
Wow.
Right. And I've seen that a couple places where literally it's like separated.
Wow.
Right.
And actually, to your point, that in the inspection it was because the ground was really compact. That was one of the things they relieved get some like weeping tile and stuff like that in there. Yeah.
And sometimes weeping tile. I've seen weeping tile. The homes fail.
Oh wow.
So now that's why you're getting water problems because the water's not draining out. It's not just draining outside the weeping tile into the house rather than around the perimeter. Right. So there's so many. Hey, you know what? There's so many moving parts in a house. So many things to look at.
No, absolutely.
So.
No, I think that's good way to end it. So
yeah, for sure.
But Darin, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks, Matthew.
I think it was very informative for everyone. How does if someone wants to get a hold of you, whether a realtor or buyer, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, for sure. So they can find me on Instagram on there quite a bit. Just my name Darin Deyong or at buyerschoice.com/Oshawa.
Okay.
Look at my website. You can Google my name on the website. I'll come up there. But yeah, so Facebook, social, Instagram.
All socials. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
For sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matthew.
All right, guys.
Appreciate it.
Goodbye, everybody. Cool.